Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend this next hour together. I am hoping that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family. My opening observation tonight, Ella Baker. Who is she? What did she accomplish? What is her impact on society today? You know, we talk a lot about Frederick Douglass, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ida B. Wells, as well as John Lewis and Martin Luther King Jr. But Ella Baker, she was the mother of the civil rights movement. She played a key role in some of the most influential organizations of her time, including the NAACP, Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference, as well as the organization of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. She was behind the scenes, effectuating the change and building and inspiring great leaders. And her statements made back then still apply today. For example, she once stated, "Until the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons becomes as important as the rest of the country as the killing of a white mother's son, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until this happens." Certainly that applies to the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks. The list, sadly and unfortunately, goes on. She also stated her role in leadership from behind the scenes by stating this in humility: "You didn't see me on television. You didn't see news stories about me. The kind of role that I tried to play," she stated, "was to pick up the pieces or put together pieces out of which I hoped organization might come. My theory is," she added, "strong people don't need strong leaders." Ella Baker, the mother of civil rights, and her message continues to be just as strong today and as greatly needed today as it was back then, because she believed that we all must stand united and not divided. And those are my opening observations. Now, Ella Baker loomed large in last night's DNC. In fact, her name was front and center as Joe Biden stepped to the podium to accept the Democratic presidential nomination. Watch this.
Ella Baker, a giant of the civil rights movement, left us with this wisdom: give people light, and they will find the way. Give people light. Those are words for our time. The current president has cloaked American darkness for much too long. Too much anger, too much fear, too much division. Here and now, I give you my word. If you entrust me with the presidency, I will draw on the best of us, not the worst. I will be an ally of the light, not the darkness. It's time for us, for we the people, to come together. And make no mistake, united we can and will overcome this season of darkness in America.
So joining me now is the Honorable Mayor ELIHU Harris. He is the former mayor, I should say, of Oakland, California. He also served in the California General Assembly, was the chancellor of Peralta Community College, and the owner of several radio stations in the state of California, and also Rita Jo Lewis. She is an attorney. She is the director of congressional affairs and a senior fellow at the German Marshall Fund of the United States, and an attorney, former diplomat, and former candidate for mayor here in the DC area. It's a delight to have both of you on. And of course, we're talking about all things as it pertains to the DNC. I've got to start with you, Mr. Mayor. Having served as a politician, what did you think of the political points that were gained or negated during the DNC?
Well, first of all, a lot of it's pageantry. So when you get to substance, it's really much about perception as about anything else. I think the real substance will come about in the next 10 weeks. We really start talking about the issues and begin to differentiate between the personalities and really talk about the policies they hope to put into place. I think people are going to be paying attention. I think it's a very important race. I think that was clearly described during the Democratic convention. But the question is, once you get beyond the personalities, what does it mean to the voters? I think that's going to have to be defined much better in the next 10 weeks.
That's pretty much what a lot of people have been saying. Rita, the critics of the Democrats have stated, and the critics mostly coming from the right, have stated that the Democrats are not up to the challenge of running this country. What say you?
You know what I say, the Democrats are definitely up to running this country, and it's really going to boil down to leadership. You know, thank you for really having me on the show and to being here with the mayor to talk about the Democratic Convention. You know, I served as a permanent rules committee member for Joe Biden, and it was really to see the opportunity for Democrats to come together under a unity theme. And to see them last night, of all of the people who had ran, a lot of them who had ran for president, I think is a testament to Joe Biden and a testament to Bernie Sanders to say, you know, how can we come together first as a party before we can also talk about coming together as a country. And I think that I think the mayor is correct, over these next several weeks and months, that choice is going to be blaring the difference between our presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, and the current occupant of the White House, President Trump.
Let me ask you both. Did you find it remarkable that Joe Biden, when he stepped up to the podium to announce his acceptance of the Democratic presidential nominee status, did you find it remarkable that he mentioned Ella Baker, the mother of civil rights? Mr. Mayor?
But I do think that they wanted to make sure that they touched all the different bases. The Democratic Party is a big tent party, and it has a lot of different pieces. Everybody was looking for something that spoke to their particular interest. But quite frankly, a lot of people don't know about Ella Baker. So I think it was a very unique position to take. It wasn't John Lewis, it wasn't Martin Luther King. Ella Baker is a unique figure historically in civil rights, but I think it was very good that he mentioned her and demonstrated that there was a depth of his understanding of the Black community and certainly civil rights.
And Rita, as a Black woman who represents a lot of people in government, and of course you're working as a diplomat in the past, you've actually worked with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. What was it like for you as a Black woman to see that Ella Baker was elevated to a primetime status?
You know, as they say, the speech had been embargoed and no one really knew what the vice president was going to say. But when he did step up to that microphone with the pageantry of America behind him, those flags, and in the moment that they unveiled the vice president, and one of the first, I would say in that first paragraph that he started talking about Ella Baker, it really took me back, but it also took me forward, because I said, you know what, here's a candidate that is throughout this week, the people who have participated, from the average Americans to the political leaders to the policy types, the people who have run for president, I believe they all understand the transformative moment that we're in. And we did look like a big tent party of which we are. And for him to come out on the first beginning of his speech and to start talking about that, I think he was showing the respect that the vice president has for the African-American community and for the American story.
Yeah, indeed. I think both of you are so correct in your assessment and acknowledgement of what unfolded last night. When we return, I'd like to continue my dialogue with the former mayor of Oakland, ELIHU Harris, as well as attorney Rita Jo Lewis here in the DC area. We'll be back with more, and we'll talk about analytically what has to happen in these next 70 plus days between now and the election, and what might lie ahead for next week's RNC convention. That and more after the break. Welcome back to the program. I'm enjoying a conversation I'm having. And first, I'm delighted to have both of you on. The former mayor of Oakland, California, ELIHU Harris, an honor to have you, sir. And I'm equally honored to have attorney Rita Jo Lewis, who has worked so extensively here in the DC area in terms of diplomacy and so many other issues. The bottom line is, as we look ahead And I think the mayor, you laid this out very clearly, what the Democrats have to do beyond messaging, and that is to actually get out the vote.
Yes.
But having stated that, what do you anticipate as being the central issue of this election? Because there's so much happening racially, the coronavirus, police reform, and the inequities that we've seen because of the coronavirus. And as your native senator has said, Kamala Harris, she said, there is a coronavirus, but then there's the virus of racism, and there's no vaccine for that.
Let me think about it. I think this is really a clear distinction. I said it is about character, but it's also about policies. The one thing I think Donald Trump has done has really put the Republican Party in a very far right position. Never been even acknowledged as this far right by most. And I think, quite frankly, for many Black and African Americans and other people of color, he's made it very distinguished. He wants to make this the party of the white, the ultra bright, the white, whatever. The racial distinction is unfortunate, but it's real. And the policies in many ways will be defined on the basis of race and economics. I don't think it's going to be very difficult for most people to make a decision as to where they stand, not only on the issues, but on the candidate. So in that way, I think it's going to be a very unique race. I think it's going to get defined. And ultimately, I think people are going to turn out because they really believe this is a distinction and a difference that's important to them as citizens and as people in this community.
I would be remiss if I did not bring up Kamala Harris, the vice presidential nominee. And you were mentioning, Rita, Steph Curry and his family, which was such a cute piece and delightful to see how Steph and his wife engage with their daughters and how they're already teaching them how to be politically active and civically minded. But Mayor, of course, Steph Curry operates in your backyard, and Kamala Harris grew up in your backyard. So I've got to ask you first, what is your feeling about this historical pick that Joe Biden made? And now we're watching history unfold in the candidacy for Vice President Kamala Harris.
First of all, I've known Kamala since she got out of law school, and she is not only dynamic, but she's authentic. She's someone who has really grown up and demonstrated her ability on every stage and in every opportunity that she's been given. She's going to rise to the occasion. It's a very big challenge to being on that national stage, as we saw in the Democratic primaries. But I think now what you're going to see is a woman who's on a mission. She's going to put the energy in, she's going to put the time in, and the substance. I think she's going to be an incredible vice presidential candidate and an incredible vice president. I think it's really important because you got to get the vote out. In 2016, people didn't vote. Over 95 million people didn't vote at all. That was the difference in the election. This year, I think people are going to be encouraged, they're going to be empowered, they're going to get out and inspired to vote because it's important. They understand that things are on the line, the future is on the line. I think Kamala Harris is the future. I think people are going to see that in her candidacy.
And Rita is one of the organizers of Women of Color for Joe Biden. What are you saying about Kamala Harris's candidate?
Oh, I mean, well, first of all, I think the mayor basically said it all. I only have a few comments on that. I said that, when Kamala was finally picked, diversity totally matters, and it's more than a talking point. I mean, when you just look at that ticket, that we're moving in the right direction for America, that we are now in a moment where everything, we can just look at what's happening in the streets around Black Lives Matter. It is now multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-generational. And I believe this ticket represents that. And when you have someone like Kamala, who is this transformative figure as the first Black woman of Indian descent on a major party ticket. And, and I'm proud of saying this, my ticket is our ticket. It's the ticket of the Democratic Party that we have been working in for decades and that my parents been working in. But, it was wonderful to be able to see someone who I believe shares your values. I mean, as a HBCU, historically Black college grad, I did not graduate from Howard, but my brother did. And I understand the magnitude and the significance in that. But as she's also an Alpha Kappa Alpha and a part of the Divine Nine, I am a part of the Divine Nine as a Delta, even though I'm wearing that green today. but the thing about it is that it's electrifying. And that's what we're going to need in order to continue to keep focus on the fact that we have got work to do. We cannot let up.
I want to thank you both. I hope you would do me one favor. That's come back. some time next week to analyze what's going on with the Republican side of the aisle. Certainly what we saw this week is that the Democratic Party is concerned about a big tent approach, bringing in Democrats, Republicans, independents, black, white, brown, yellow, red, everybody coming into that big tent, because it really matters that we, the people, rise. Thank you, former Mayor ELIHU Harris, and attorney and diplomat Rita Lewis. Love and appreciate you both. Thank you for the great work you do to improve not only the Black community, but America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're coming back with more after this. So welcome back to the program. I'm joined now by two gentlemen from the California connection. I call them my California connection, the West Coast in the house. And they're going to talk tonight about what unfolded at the DNC. It's Timothy Allen Simon of TAS Strategies, as well as civil rights attorney Mark Harris, who of course is the partner to the Ben Crump law firm based in Sacramento, sir. As Black men, all three of us know the African-American struggle. All three of us have had the talk with our children about how they should conduct themselves in society in general, but also when they encounter police stops for traffic violations or whatever. Did you find it at all important with the fact that he did not shy away from addressing the George Floyd murder and stating what his administration would likely do in response to that? Not only George Floyd, but Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and sadly, the list goes on.
I think that this person, this man, this presidential candidate, Joe Biden, this father, this grandfather, has been consistent in terms of being able to call out things like what happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Of course, I was happy that he acknowledged it. Of course, I was happy that his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, our vice presidential candidate, acknowledged it. It would be completely tone deaf not to. I think it points to exactly why it's important for us to recognize the human side of Joe Biden. So yesterday there was a big debate among the commentators after the speech about his speech being light on policy, heavy on sentimentalism. That works for me. The president has to be a person who has big heart, big compassion. To use Kelly Wright's term, big love. I think we've moved away from that. We've seen how important it is in the absence of those things with the current inhabitant of 1600 Black Lives Matter Plaza. So I think it's fantastic that Joe Biden shared himself with America. I think the image of Joe Biden, the issue of whether or not he's qualified is a non-issue. Of course he's qualified. He's done everything you can do short of being president in this country to evidence him being qualified. But will he be the kind of person when something unexpected comes up, like another police shooting, like another pandemic, to use that big heart of his to be the best president, the best leader that America deserves? I believe he set the stage and checked the box on that one pretty firmly last night.
Timothy.
I may be taking a slightly different view. One, I don't think there is a white presidential candidate in the history of our country that owes more. I'm not going to say Abraham Lincoln, because most African Americans didn't participate in that election. That owes more to the African American community than Joe Biden. He was selected by a Black man to be his vice president. He was resurrected by a Black man in terms of James Clyburn and resuscitated to win the Democratic nomination. So everything he's doing, there's a great scene in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, where Sidney Poitier engages in an exchange with his father being a postal worker. And his father was saying how much he had sacrificed for him to get him to medical school and to become a physician. And Sidney Poitier said, that's what you were supposed to do. So what Biden did last night, and my concern today is the commercialization of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and we don't want to see this commercialized. We want to see it weaponized for justice. And so I think it was very important for him to address it. I think it was an obligation. I don't agree with President Biden or Vice President Biden and presidential nominee that we will wipe out racism in America in his administration. I think those are goals that sound very good or very lofty, but this great nation, and great it is, was built on racism. It was built on slavery. And we have to put it in that context and understand how to manage that clear factor in our daily existence as Black men and Black women.
Gentlemen, hold your thought. When we come back, we'll talk about what we anticipate for next week's convention, the RNC. I'm talking to Timothy Allen Simon and attorney Mark Harris. Back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. I'm talking to civil rights attorney Mark Harris, as well as another attorney, Timothy Allen Simon, who has TAS Strategies, consulting firm based there in California. In the previous segment, we were talking about Joe Biden and his speech, and we'll be talking about that throughout the show today with other guests as well. But I wanted to go back to what you were saying at the break, and that was that this is something, the speech about George Floyd should not be a commercialization, but a weaponization to keep America focused on racism and how we have to end it. And to your point, it's a lofty goal for Joe Biden to want to end racism under his administration, should he go on to win the presidency. But let's talk about that a little bit more. Based on that, what do you anticipate from the RNC, gentlemen, when the Republican Party, the grand old party, when its founding took place, was actually to fight against slavery as part of an abolitionist movement? What say you about where the RNC stands today?
I think that, to borrow from Attorney Simon's words, there'll be a weaponization, all right, of the assassination of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And that weaponization will be used against, if you will, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I think there will be fear. I think that in past Republican campaigns, we've seen everything from Willie Horton, for those old enough to remember that campaign ploy. There'll be everything that you can think of that will be used to weaponize, again, to use that word, the protests and demonstrations. I think fear is what Donald Trump and the Republicans will use to combat the hope that Biden and Harris bring to the American people. I think we'll get a triple dose of so-called patriotism. And I say so-called because I consider myself a patriot. I know Timothy Simon is a patriot. I know you, Kelly Wright, are a patriot. Patriotism is not limited to just a certain type or a certain ethnicity. But I think that what the GOP will do is they will paint patriotism as being MAGA, as being synonymous with MAGA, and being synonymous, if you will, with white supremacy and some of the other things that this administration represents. I think that's the sort of thing we'll see, heavy on the patriotism, heavy on the fear, and the weaponization of the protests that were used against police violence in America over the past several months.
Timothy, aren't we at a critical point, a critical crossroads in our country right now with regards to divide and conquer politics, when it should be unite and change politics?
Well, divide and conquer has been the strategy that the Trump administration and the Trump campaign, which began the day after he was inaugurated, has put forth in America. It has a long history, as Michelle Alexander so eloquently wrote in her book, The New Jim Crow. The law and order campaign or position is just an extension of the chattel slavery that our ancestors experienced. The sharecropper control over our communities on into Jim Crow as we know of it today. And so that what used to be a dog whistle has now become a bullhorn. The Republicans will leverage the peaceful protest that occurred after the death of George Floyd to put fear in largely white communities that under a Democratic administration, you will be facing this type of unrest. By the way, an unrest that this nation was founded upon. It was founded upon protests. It was founded upon the destruction of property, that be at the Boston Tea Party. But they will use that to put fear, along with immigration policies and other matters, to put fear in what is traditional white America, and those who believe with traditional white America, that you have to clamp down on any type of voice that is challenging the status quo. That is a very systemic process in this country, rather than glorifying it because it is the founding of our country. So I think you will see there, as Attorney Harris so brilliantly said, you will see their label of what patriotism is supposed to be. But for those of us who experienced patriotic enslavement, we know that there's a different type of patriotism that can be demonstrated in this country.
Gentlemen, very, very good to have you talk to us. This is a very stimulating conversation. We've got to have it, and we'll likely be talking about it all next week as the RNC steps forward. Tough days ahead, a lot of hard work ahead for uniting this nation, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, black, white. We've all got to really bridge this divide and come together politically, racially, in every way. And that will take some doing, without a doubt. It will take some doing. It's a heavy lift, even now in the 21st century. Timothy Allen Simon, Mark Harris, thank you both, and have a good weekend. Get prepared for next week so we can put our seatbelts on and go through another convention.
Thank you. Be
that
safe.
will likely be different than the one we saw this week. Thank you both.
Pray for us. Pray for us in California.
Yes. To that end, we're praying for you that all of you will remain safe and that the fires will die down. I pray for a miracle of rainfall, heavy rainfall. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us about that, and stay safe.
Thank you, Kelly.
Back with more after this. And welcome back to the program. So joining me now are three of the panelists who have been with me all week long. And I certainly appreciate all three of these ladies. They've had a lot to impart. So it's South Carolina State Representative Gilda Cobb-Hunter. We have Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver and Erica Savage-Wilson. And when you're checking out Erica Savage-Wilson, make sure you check out her Savage political podcast. When you're checking out Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, make sure you follow her political analysis as well as her book on Black women. And the name of the book is, Avis?
How Exceptional Black Women Lead.
And when you check out State Representative of South Carolina, Gilda Cobb-Hunter, also understand that she's the Madam President of what?
The National Black Caucus of State Legislators, NBCSL.
All right. And Erica, where can we find your political podcast?
On Apple, everywhere that you get your podcast.
All right. Now that we've addressed all of that and the great unshameful promotions of these talented ladies, let's talk about what happened last night in a recap, if you will. I'm curious, what did you think about the acceptance speech of former Vice President Joe Biden accepting the Democratic presidential nomination? I'll start with you, Gilda.
I thought that it showed that he'd been waiting decades to accept a nomination speech. I thought it set the right tone, the right message. I loved the fact that he started it out quoting Ella Baker. For me, that indicated, okay, he may not have everything in this that I want, but he's at least in the neighborhood. I thought Joe Biden did a good job making the case for why he should become the next president, made the case that chaos is not a way to operate. And so I was pleased with the speech. I thought he did a good job. And I'm really excited about what lies ahead of us.
And Avis, I've got to ask you, did you sense at all the empathy that has been the theme of this this week, as well as We the People?
Absolutely. I mean, it was seeped all the way through his speech. I have to agree with my sister representative there. You could tell this was a speech that he had waited decades to make. I mean, I have watched Vice President Biden for many years. I've met with him multiple times. I've heard him speak in person. I've heard him speak over television. I have never in my life heard him deliver a speech like he delivered a speech last night. And I will say that he hit all the right tones for me. What I was looking for was not only his empathy, which he is through and through. That's just who he is. That's just authentically the man, right? But I was really interested in what he was going to say about policy. And I was happy that he noted what a critical moment we're in right now. And so he laid out what he would do as it relates to combating the COVID-19 crisis. He laid out the challenge that we're facing with racial justice at this time. And he argued that this is the moment that we can address that specifically. And he said that he believes that it is our call as this generation to finally basically kill the monster, not only of racism, but institutionalized racism. He talked about everything from climate change to really moving forward on the economy in substantive ways in order to make sure that people are working again. And so he hit all the notes that I personally wanted to hear, but beyond me personally, I think he hit the notes that people throughout this big, broad tent of a party really wanted to hear to sort of get off of any reservations they might have and instead move forward and support this Biden ticket all the way till November.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that was fundamentally clear is that he was saying, like you just discussed, he's an American president. That's what he's seeking to be, not left, not right, not Democrat, not Republican, even though he is the representative of the Democrat Party. He wants to be the president of all Americans, the marginalized, the forgotten, the ups and downs, the downers and the outers, and certainly having that empathy. Ladies, when we return, I'll ask you what lies ahead. That's next. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to State Representative of South Carolina, Gilda Cobb-Hunter, also president of the NBCSL and the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, Dr. Avis Jones-DeWeaver, political analyst and an author as well about exceptional Black women and many things that she does in that capacity, and Erica Savage Wilson, who of course has the Savage Political Podcast. Make sure you check her out on all platforms. So ladies, we just talked about Joe Biden. We talked about Kamala Harris all this week, and certainly that is a spark that is more than just a spark. It's turning into a flame, igniting a lot of passion in Black women across America. Based on that, what lies ahead for this election as you see it? Will Black women and women of color be the pivotal vote this November?
Well, I'll jump in first. We are the backbone of the Democratic Party. When you look at what happened with the Obama victories, it was Black women who led the way. We had the largest voter turnout of any demographic group in America twice, right? And it's my belief that for him to win and for him to win decisively, he has to at least meet or exceed Obama level turnout. And we are the key to that happening. So not only with the great sort of legislative strategy that he pushed yesterday in that very moving speech, but also the very wise selection of Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate, to me, makes sure that Black women are going to show up and show out in November. And not only will we do it, we will do it like only we can because we make everybody else in our circle come with us.
And then this has been an historical week, not only for Senator Kamala Harris becoming the first African-American woman to be named to a vice presidential ticket and run in the Harris and the Biden Harris ticket, but also 100 years removed from the fact that the 19th Amendment was passed, women's suffrage. And let us not forget who got the women to the table. And that was the fact that Black women were actively engaged and proactively campaigning for suffrage. And then white women cast them aside, went ahead and got this passage while Black women bear the brunt of still having to deal with racism. So
Right.
is history about to turn here?
Well, history has turned, I believe. The fact that Kamala Harris is on the ticket is an indicator that history has turned. Now, has it made an entirely 360-degree turn? Perhaps not. I would suggest to you we're probably more at a 90-degree with a lot more work to do. As far as what Black women will do, we will do in the next 70 plus days left what we always do. We'll just pump it up a bit, because we do have a sister on the ticket. And I do want to point out that Kamala Harris is attractive as a candidate, not just to Black women, but brown women. Her heritage, her mixed heritage, in my view, makes her a strong candidate. And as my two fellow audience members have pointed out, when we vote, we make everybody else vote. Okay, and so I think there's going to be a tremendous turnout. What I am encouraging people to do here is to vote early. By that, I mean the absentee ballot. Again, I don't want us to waste a lot of time on this postal service issue, because I don't know legislatively how much we can do to undo the damage that has already been done.
It's been a great week. We'll continue to follow the developments of what's coming up next week. And as I stated before, we will be watching that for sure and for certain to see what the Republicans will do and how they'll address what has been stated throughout the DNC. Ladies, thank you as always. I look forward to talking to you next week as we analyze what's happening within the Republican National Convention. Until then, God bless you and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Kelly.
So joining me now is Dr. Benjamin Chavis. He's the president and CEO of the NNPA, the National Newspapers Publishers Association, as well as the Black Press USA. And certainly, if you look at what's happened this past week, from the pages of the Black Press USA and the NNPA, what have you observed about the overall approach of the Democratic Party, and then last night's acceptance speech from the presidential nominee, Joe Biden?
Well, overall, the Democratic Party made history this week by nominating officially the first African-American woman to be the party's nominee for Vice President of the United States of America. So there was history made. But also, I would say overall, what you saw is a picture of a diverse Democratic Party, an inclusive Democratic Party. And I think that it not only reflects the browning of America, the changing demographics of America, but I think people got a glimpse of the future of America, to the extent to which there will be a record voter turnout in 2020, in spite of the pandemic. So this was a reflective week, but also a prospective week in terms of what we can expect, depending on the turnout of the vote. Now, of course, next week we'll be watching the RNC, the Republican National Convention, to see what they will put up, not just to counter the Democrats, but it's the messaging. I think who has the strongest message, who has the most authentic message. And of course, the context for both the DNC and the RNC is the coronavirus. The context is systemic racism. The context is that people want an improvement of their quality of life, even while a pandemic is going on. So whoever offers the answers to those questions will win the election.
And you know, we heard presidential nominee Joe Biden talk about the need for Black Americans to be recognized and actually not just recognized, but included in every facet of American life. And I find it historical in nature that this is the year the Black News Channel has launched. You talked about what's happening with the Black News Channel. It is a time for Blacks to have a voice. And we should point out that it's not a Democratic voice. It's not a Republican voice. It's an American voice that's skewed to what Black Americans face on a daily basis. So looking at the DNC and looking at the RNC, getting back to your point about messaging, what is it you'd like to hear from the Republicans in terms of their message to Black America?
Well, I think first the message has to be authentic. It should not be contrived. It should be authentic. And I think that the extent to which both the DNC and the RNC extend and disseminate and promote authentic messages to Black America, they get a response. But like our grandparents used to say to us, sometimes you have to not only read between the lines, you have to hear between the lines. You have to see between the lines. So while the messages are directed toward Black America, I think every Black person that I know in America is going to weigh the value of the message, but they're also going to weigh whether or not this is something just to hoodwink, or to use Malcolm's term, bamboozle the community. I think people are looking for not only authentic messages, but they're looking for authentic messengers who really represents the interests of improving the quality of life for Black America and other people of color. Because what we have seen time and time again, Kelly, when Black people and other people of color make progress in America, it inures benefit to all Americans.
Absolutely. 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 Dr. Benjamin Chavis, I do appreciate all the work that you've done throughout your years. And then, of course, what you're doing through the Black Press USA. I do appreciate the Black News Channel having this opportunity to engage with history. You know, we can report it all, but it's the American people that will have to decide. And that's certainly what we wanted to report all the stories, analyze it, provide insight, and provide some inspiration. But it's still the American people who will have to decide what the future looks like. And that includes all of us, Black people, brown people, yellow people, red people, all kinds of people, all God's children. Doc, thank you. And we look forward to having you next week to provide more analysis of what the Republican messaging will be. And certainly we will be watching that very closely, just like we've watched this past week. I appreciate everything that you're doing, sir.
Thank you. God bless.
All right. God bless you too. We'll be back with more after this. And welcome back. What a week it has been following the developments unfolding at the Democratic National Convention. Now it's on to the campaign trail. And of course, next week we'll be following the RNC as well. Also, I'd like to point out that on Monday, make sure you're watching because we have the world-renowned motivational speaker, Les Brown, on this show. And Les will be, of course, giving us a real boost for a motivational Monday. In the meantime, my final word is, as we've seen throughout this week, we the people must stand united, not divided. So hopefully we've all been righted, ignited, and united to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Have a great weekend, everyone. God bless.
You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train.